were killed by Microsoft, and Microsoft kind of took the ideas and incorporated them into the, the Office suite or something like that. And now people think of these things as the innovations of Microsoft because they don't see them anywhere else, when in fact these things came from the companies which were being copied. In the case of Netscape, you even have emails from the company where it just says, well, all we can do now is to copy feature by feature from Netscape and try to replace them this way. And that's just the way they think inside. Just look at what the competition is doing and copy them, and then try to mass produce and mass market the thing and destroy it.
For the next news item that I want to mention now, and it's something that I think Microsoft is very good at. There's one area that I think Microsoft has excelled time and time again on, in my opinion, and that's upgrades and problems with upgrades and hosing systems. We recently talked about Windows Phone 7 and Samsung, and how the update that was to prepare for an update of an update, I think I've got that about right, was hosing some Samsung phones and bricking them effectively. Well, it seems that the service pack for Windows 7 is continuing to give some users a few headaches, is probably the politest way of putting it. The Register's been reporting on this quite exclusively, and according to the Register, Microsoft don't actually seem to know what's going on. I don't know if you've had anything that you've been told or you've
I wrote about it. I didn't read it very carefully because I didn't have much time. I just encouraged people to read it more closely. But it happened with Vista as well. The user base they have for Windows XP is a lot greater than the number of people who use Windows 7. And also the number of developers they typically have for a stable, they call it stable, but for a mature kind of operating system, that's something that's been around the market for a long time, is a lot greater than the number of people working on something like Vista. I mean, I don't know if they actually have anybody working on Vista now, and the way they allocate the programmers, I once actually heard it from a person who works close to the company, they actually have to choose people based on their expertise and how many years they've spent working with the code base of Windows. So you have people who've worked for 20 years and they know exactly the functions and all the modules. And they have to decide, is this person going to work on patching Windows XP? Or is he going to be patching Vista, which doesn't have many users? Or is this person going to develop the next version of Windows? And they have to allocate these people. And the way they do that involves the priorities they have. So with operating systems like Vista, it's quite likely they will break something in the patching, and they did that too. It just becomes unbootable, and I'm not sure how people recover from it. And maybe they don't even have part. I haven't been using Windows for many years, and I'm not sure if they already have a habit of at least trying to put the files separately from the OS, also in terms of partitioning. So you can actually install the operating system again without erasing all your personal files. I don't know if they do that now.
No, and I can answer the question either, because I literally only use Windows at work, and that's XP. So I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I've dabbled with Windows 7 for a few months, and when it first came out, and as I said before, when I first got this new machine to install Linux on, I never even actually booted into Windows. It was the first thing I did was install a live CD and immediately install Linux on it. So I couldn't answer that question. Maybe somebody can give us a heads up on that, because it's all a bit mystery to me.
One thing I do remember in my I actually have my laptop with me now. It's got DSL installed on it. The way it came back then with Windows 98. It had two partitions, and one of them was a backup partition where you kind of have some files that you can kind of copy over, but the operating system itself was all installed on the same partition. There was no separation between. It's just something to do with architecture in general, because the way it's built, you'd expect, if you think that the system is not going to be very stable, and if you're going to get malware inside the executable files, then you probably do want some separation between the types of files, so you can just host the operating system and put a new version of the operating system and still use the same files. And I think in Windows it's a bit complicated, because it wants to wipe your hard drive, unless of course they've changed something about it.
I mean, if we may stick on the subject of issues with Windows, and I think this is something that most Windows users will be familiar with malware and botnets of some description, some degree. I don't know if you have any comments on the Rustock botnet, which was recently closed down. There's a couple of points on that.
Yeah, I was gonna write something about it later. I don't know it by the name of the. I haven't read it very carefully. Is it the one that Microsoft claims credit for shutting down?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So basically, they make the mess, they clean up, and they want credit. They want to thank you for it.
Apparently
And
so.
I read and I wanted to write about it in the context of several articles I've been reading about the blame of Windows and how people try to blame computers in general and what it causes people to think. And one of the shows that's doing that is, shows like Click and the BBC in general. They do all kind of nonsense like that. And this afternoon in the local Manchester list for Linux users, we received some info. Apparently there is going to be a special show of Click about Ubuntu.
Oh, right.
Which is really strange. I mean, they have to rename the show, don't they?
Yes, yeah.
So why is Ubuntu? Does it run on Windows? Or what is this thing? Is it an antivirus? And the second thing is did you hear about this thing called Kiwi PC or something with Kiwi? It's kind of a Ubuntu-based computer that's for senior citizens. So kind of a polite way of trying to say, well, this computer is going to be easier for certain people to use, and it has a different type of keyboard as well, sort of accessibility reasons. And you have loads of these now, and they usually run Linux because I suppose it's a lot easier to manage Linux for what I've seen. It is easier.
For somebody who hasn't used computers, because we have to remember, and it's something that I often forget, that there's a generation of people who weren't brought up with computer systems, weren't even maybe employed where computer systems were used. Certainly not in the capacity where they would be familiar to today's machine that sits on your desk. And if you ask people to jump on board with a new hobby, which not only requires you to learn a completely different way of doing things, but also to protect yourself from spam and from malware and from crashes
and to not open your mail. This is your mailbox. Yeah. Don't open anything.
Exactly.
You have to explain to them because they're not used to the fact that might be some Unabomber or something sending them packages or something. In the mail. In the worst case, just pick something and throw it to the trash. But here you have to tell them, don't even touch that. Don't click anything. And it's a really complicated issue, though.
I worry if I ever had to use Windows in the home again, because I'd be completely blasé to any security risks. I've been so used to over the years not having to be concerned. I mean, everybody has to be vigilant. I think it's very wise to say that anything that you receive via email has got to be, you've got to remain vigilant, and you have to research if you're installing things. You can't just go around blind. But security, especially, is something on Linux that doesn't take up much of our time thinking about. With Windows, for me, it tends to be a full-time career in order to secure your own copy of Windows at home. And there was virus checking and malware checking, and there was phishing scams and all sorts of things that you could worry about when you were exposing your computer online. With Linux, I don't particularly even consider that issue. I'm always safe in the knowledge that a reinstall is a very simple, quick thing to do. And even if I was infected with something that was targeted at Linux users. But I certainly haven't experienced any issues. I'm sure you haven't, Roy. I think we would have chatted by now about it if you'd experienced any malware on Linux.
Yeah, occasional issue sometimes of a program being kind of rogue, and if you don't want to install the wrong types of programs. I had situations where I heard from people who had basically went to a repo that's not the official one, and they thought, well, this was going to have some old software, and it was like located somewhere in China, and then they installed it, and it just wasn't exactly what they expected. But that's kind of asking for trouble in the same way that, well, some people say Android is not secure, and the BBC always, it would very happily name Android when there is a virus, kind of, not even a virus, but actually a piece of malware you have to install on Android. But it doesn't actually point out you actually have to take this program, not from the official sources, and you have to want to install it on your computer, thinking, this is what I want to install, without thinking, well, it could just be something bad. And of course, if you want to harm your computer, you just go to the command line. You type rm-rf, and that's it. It's not really hard to break your system if you want to. And you do know you do have to ensure in the distros that people don't have very easy access to maybe to the command line, or to have access to software outside repositories. And if they do want to install something outside of that, they usually have to punch in the root password. And if you manage a computer